Welcome to Corks Conversation with Alex Kenna.
Yes. Alex is a lawyer, writer, and amateur painter based in Los Angeles. Before law school, Alex studied painting and art history. She also worked as a freelance culture writer and sold art in a gallery. She's originally from Washington, D.C., but now, as we said, lives in Los Angeles with her husband, son, and a giant schnauzer with the best name in the world, Zelda. When she's not writing, Alex can be found exploring Southern California, because that is her new home, and toddler wrangling, which is a whole thing, playing string instruments badly, which is awesome. This is Alex's debut novel, What Meets the Eye, and here it is if you're watching us on
Very
YouTube.
cool cover.
It's a great cover.
With the art in the background. Yep.
Yes, it came out in December, and so we're really excited to talk to Alex about it today. Welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Like we had said earlier, we really enjoyed this book, and it's a mystery. It's called What Meets the Eye, and it's a mystery that follows PI and former cop Kate Miles as she dives into the Los Angeles art world and how it can intersect with the criminal world. So, it's a lot of fun. And when she investigates the death of Margot Starling, who is a well-known artist. And so is it suicide? Is it murder? There's a twisted mystery. And I really love getting to know both Kate and Margot. And the way you introduce your characters throughout, you unfold the plot by switching back and forth between time and also different character points of view, which is it's fun to read. It's fun probably to write, I would think. But how hard is it?
I think the hardest thing, I think, is going back in the editing phase and making sure that everybody doesn't sound like each other, especially because we all have kind of like writing quirks or verbal quirks. And then you don't realize the first go around that everybody says the same thing, or even, stuff like the book doesn't have a ton of cursing, but there's a couple characters who curse a little bit, and you have to, even stuff like that. I had to kind of remind myself to vary it, because even people curse, they don't curse the same way. And so that was kind of fun. And that was definitely a little bit of a challenge. And I made my husband read it a terrifying number of times, the poor man. But part of it was like, okay, does this character sound like me? And he's like, still yes. I'm like, okay.
So you would have him read a separate chapter, say, and just say, okay, this is this character, and tell me who it sounds like.
Well, he
or did you make him read the whole book? Is what I'm thinking. Every time, 100 times, or just parts?
Both. He's very long suffering. But
it's part of the marriage contract. You married.
Oh, yeah. He knows the drill. Well, he's a huge book nerd. Like when we moved here from Philadelphia, he brought 36 boxes of books.
Oh my gosh.
Our kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a book nerd, but it's at the point where I'm like, there's something diagnosable going on. The situation's getting weird. So he has a 2-book at a time rule now, because we just don't have shelf space. But it gives me a little bit of leverage. I'm like, but you love reading, dear.
But you have toddler toys now, and those also need to be put somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes. We have to organize the toddler toys and find room.
That's awesome.
So does he? Is he? He's not a writer as well, is he? Or
no, he's a lawyer.
Okay. Lawyers like to read a lot.
Yeah.
Kathy was a lawyer as well.
Writers.
So you guys have that in common. She also loves art.
That's why this was such a great fit. But I have an uncle, when I told him that I was writing years ago, when I was also a prosecutor, and he just said, I've never met a lawyer that doesn't want to be a writer ever.
It's true.
It is kind of true.
Yeah, I know several lawyers where they have a writing group, and everybody has a novel under the cover. And I think it's actually in some ways harder, because lawyers, we tend to be perfectionists. It's hard to be able to let go of your baby, I think, where you're
that sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, for sure. So are you did you, in order to do, keep track of all these different characters and all the different chapters and different time frames, I mean, are you very much a plotter?
Not at all. I'm like incapable of doing an outline. I think the closest I can come is like grabbing a legal pad and scribbling like a crazy person. But I kind of just have to like dump words on a computer screen and then go back and polish them and try to make them make sense.
Wow.
So I'm very disorganized, I think, in writing, and then a pretty obsessive editor, and that's where I try to make it a little bit more like I had a plan. But I usually know where I'm going in the end. It's just kind of how to get there is where it gets a little tricky.
So did Margot or Kate appear to you first, or was the art the thing that took off? Like, where did this come from? Where did this gem of an idea come from?
I knew I wanted to write an art related mystery, and it was partly it was just because that's my background. Like I went to art school. I briefly worked in the art world, except I graduated in the Great Recession, which is not exactly a great time to break into anything artistic. So I went to law school, like most of the people who graduated at the same time as me. But I had an art background and I had a law background. And I had tried to sell a book before this. And my timing was horrible. It's a political thriller, and it was just not the time when anybody wanted to read a political thriller. So I wanted to kind of was a little bit strategic in thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be approaching people. I want to write about something that I actually have a background in, so that people will take it seriously when I start submitting something. And also, I wanted to write about something that I knew what I was talking about. I thought it would probably come out better a little bit.
Yeah, write what you know.
Yeah, you write what you know. So I started kind of with the idea of art forgery and wanting to do something with that. And then the story kind of just grew around that. And I wrote, little pieces here, and then I put it aside and then come back and write a little bit more. And it kind of came together organically.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. I love mystery and thriller combined with art. It's my absolute favorite little niche. And my favorite author is Daniel Silva, who writes he writes an espionage series. If you aren't familiar, his protagonist is an Israeli spy, but his cover is an art restorer and painter. And that's I think what got me sucked in. And so you must love also art and mystery and thrillers. So are there some authors you love as well that inspired you?
Oh yeah, Katie Letary, she's really amazing.
We had her on our
We did.
podcast.
We had her on earlier this season.
Oh yeah, her book is so good, and although it's almost like the tension between the characters is what drew me in even more than the art. It's just there's one of the two characters is like you just love to hate him so much. He's so repugnant, and it's like you're like, I hate you, but I can't stop reading.
Can't stop reading you.
Yeah, that was really fun there. And then I'm trying to think, but I read another really good one recently, but I'm like blanking on the name. Yeah. Crooked Lane has a couple good ones that are coming out that sound really exciting. Have to do my plug,
Kathy's just trying to get her TBR list going.
I am. I absolutely. I have a huge.
I can never remember names and things later either. So I'm like
did not mean to put you in the line.
Oh yeah.
yeah. But I do love. But see, I'm the least artistic person in the history of the world. I just love looking about art, learning about art, but I can't do any art, and so I think that's where my interest is that I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing.
I feel that way about music. Like I bought a guitar. I was going to try to entertain my kid, and I had this fantasy that I would learn and he would learn, and we'd be like a musical family. As soon as he learned to say no, it was like, no, mommy, no. At least I'm thinking that means he has an ear because he knows when I should stop.
Yeah, he's like, you need to stop. I'll continue.
I know. I am that way about music too. I'm like, I wish I could sing. I wish I could play an instrument really well. And I always say, okay, I'm going to take guitar lessons. I'm going to do this. And, I want to learn a chord. And then it's like, 3 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to do that.
That's awesome.
You only need like 3 cards, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just try. Well, I am in awe of your ability to just start writing and dabbling. Christy is very much in that world where she can just pants it along.
I'm a
Or
pantser a little bit
as
more.
Lisa Unger calls it, a gardener. She doesn't like pantsing. She says a gardener. I always love that better because it sounds so earthy and organic. I'm the opposite. I want to be organized and have everything plotted out, and so I just find that it sounds so fun to be able to just start writing and then have things grow. But I know it doesn't happen that way. It's got to be also just brutally hard.
Oh, it's I think it's fun when it's fun, and then it's torturous when it's torturous.
Right.
Like, even like I'm polishing up the sequel now, and I kind of got like maybe 95% of the way through, and then I got to a point where I'm like, huh.
Maybe I should have thought this through a little more.
What now?
like, this is a bind. I have to figure out how to get out of this bind. So that was a pretty fraught like 72 hours. Then I eventually worked it out. But I wish I could kind of sit down and plan everything out. And I think you don't have to go back and kind of smooth things later on.
Well, we talked with Jeffrey Deaver, who's very much into organizing.
That,
yeah. And after talking to him, I'm sort of inspired to do sort of like a hybrid type thing.
Well, so back up, he used to be a pantser or an organic writer. And then he stopped 7 books in and decided to become this obsessive compulsive outliner.
Like his outlines are 100 pages long, so he basically, and I get it, because when you know where something's going to go, or what you're going to do that chapter, it is kind of fun to just fill it in, and make it pretty. So that way I was like, okay, he was talking about like putting sticky notes, with different like scenes and then moving them around. And I'm like, I could maybe do that. And then might, I don't know, because if you want to be complicated, like you're saying, then it's a lot of editing. So you have to really love editing. And I don't really love editing. I mean, I like it. Okay. I'm learning to like it, but
I feel like my dog or my kid would eat the sticky note, and then I'd be like, oh my God. I'd be like,
I don't know what to do.
I remember reading a Stephen King's book on writing a few years back, and he had kind of argued against outlining along with the idea that, like, if you don't know what's going to happen and you kind of write yourself into a bind, you get to keep that element of surprise, because you don't know where you're going, then the reader's less likely to know where they're going. And I kind of clung to that as an excuse.
Stephen King said you could do it.
I can do it.
Alex, I think that's so funny, because I think that's one of the great things about writing, right? Is that there are no hard and fast rules, except for you better do what works for you. But I think we all like to find the person that does it kind of the way we do, and then you do attach yourself to them.
So we're always asking, because it's we're going to find something that's going to be like, oh, that's the way we do it. Yeah.
Okay, Christy, I think it's time for a question in the bottle.
All right.
So Alex, Christy has a wild question that she pulls out. It might be a question you get to the bottom of a bottle, let's say.
Okay.
Not a bottom of a cup of coffee like you have, because you have a toddler.
Yeah. Would you rather be in jail for 5 years or be in a coma for a decade?
Well, I work in law enforcement, so jail's probably a bad choice. So I'm going to go with the coma.
Oh, really? She's got the inside
coma.
source. She knows, like, you do not want to be in jail. Listen to that, everybody out there listening. I
don't think I'd be very popular in jail, I'll put it that way.
You would definitely not be popular in jail.
That's
definitely
true.
Not.
That's true.
This sounds awful. I agree with you. I used to be a prosecutor too, so I totally understand. And I was in Minneapolis, so I wasn't nearly, in the area that you're at, but it, city stuff. But I'm in a very, very small town now. I think I kind of have this fantasy that, like, in a very small town jail, like, for like a misdemeanor, like for a year, like, couldn't you just read every day all day or something?
Well, that's
like,
what I'm thinking.
It's not dangerous here. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if the book selection would be quite as
probably not
broad as you're thinking, but
probably not. But it is a fantasy I have.
Yeah,
like someone's saying you have to go away for like a year, and I just like, can I just read for a year? So speaking of your experience in law enforcement, you wrote from a cop standpoint instead of a prosecutor's standpoint. And I was wondering why. And have any of your, because at least when I worked in prosecution, I got to be very close with a lot of the detectives, and the law enforcement officers that I worked with. And I was wondering what some of your coworkers or colleagues think of your character.
Well, I've had good feedback from my coworkers who've read it so far.
That's so cool.
And a couple of my friends, though, they told me that Margot really reminds them of me, which is kind of scary because she's not a good person.
Margot?
Yeah. Like, really?
Not Kate, so Margot.
Kate is the nice one. Margot's almost a psychopath. I'm like, but
she does have a sense of justice about her, I guess.
Yeah, she does.
I don't know.
She does. That's true.
I wasn't really going for likable with her, but I guess it is what it is. But it was kind of a little bit of an escapism to write from like kind of a different perspective. And I think also like I've met a lot of really badass women cops, and they're brave and they're tough and they have like a good sense of humor, and I'm just not brave at all. Like if I see a spider and my husband's like coming home, I'll call him. I'll be like, "You need to come home soon. He's a spider." So that was like, it's fun to write about, I think, characters who have like aspects of their personality that you can relate to, but it's also kind of fun to write about people who are different in certain ways. So like Margot's really mean, and that was kind of fun to try on because
right.
I don't think I'm mean, but I guess maybe some of my friends
know. I'm like, what kind of friends you got there? I mean, I'd start wondering about them too. I'm going to put you in my next book, and guess what? This bad guy's after you. You
mean like, wait, her sense of humor, not when she's blackmailing people, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, right. You're like, which part of her?
But that was kind of
she's
fun.
She's beautiful. There you go.
Ah, there you go. She's pretty. I'll give her that.
So you mentioned that this is your debut, if we haven't mentioned that. I think we did earlier. But you are working on the sequel. And so I would love to ask you how it is that you manage the busy life that you do. Our listeners always want to know how writers write, period. But when you have young children and a very pressing career, how do you fit it in? How do you make it work?
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to emphasize is like, it's really hard. I think as people always say, oh, you just have to make time. And I'm like, please elaborate.
Exactly. Like, could you be more specific? I'm taking notes.
I mean, like I haven't been to the gym since 2020. My house is a pigsty. We have like a sink full of dishes. Like if child services saw the size of my dust bunny, it might get bad. But honestly, like just really dysfunctional priorities. Like we neglect house stuff. I neglect house stuff. It's pretty bad. And then it really is like stealing hours when you can. I mean, it really is like, the kid will finally nap, although he's decided to stop doing that this week. So that's been interesting. And then, okay, he's unconscious. Where's my computer? And then I kind of like speed type until wakes up again. But it's really a challenge. But I do think, in kind of like I guess a masochistic way, having super time constraints is really focusing. And like when I worked on this book, I had a totally different lifestyle. I had like a much more laid back job, and I had a high risk pregnancy in the pandemic, and I really wasn't leaving my house. So I had nothing to do but like lay in bed and write. And like I had the luxury of procrastinating so much more. It's like, okay, I'll write a little and then I'll go to Facebook, and then, maybe I'll buy something on Amazon. And like now I just can't do that. But I think it's made me much more disciplined because I have to. And instead of being like, okay, well, I've got this whole evening and I'll write a little and snack a little and drink a little, like, now it's like, okay, I've got 45 minutes until the kid wakes up, let me see if I can crank something out.
Wow.
But yeah, it's pretty brutal. And, when people complain about the struggle to find time, like I'm super sympathetic.
Yeah. That's, there's something about deadlines or proscribed efficiency where like you say, you have 40 minutes, and you can go.
I know it's a weird thing. You really have to trick your mind.
You don't have the luxury to mess around with, well, I can't really feel like writing right now. Like that's what you've got. And you're on, I assume, a deadline.
So do you have a book contract? Or, I mean, is somebody waiting for this book?
I don't have a contract. I'm cautiously optimistic. I sold the first book, but just because I didn't have an agent when I cold submitted to a publisher. So,
Really?
I had a contract for one book, and I'm not complaining. I mean, it was a godsend. And I would say I'm cautiously optimistic on book. But
we will just give a shout out to your publisher, which is Crooked Lane, and they are one of the very few publishers that will take unagented submissions sometimes. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, there aren't a lot of them. But some of them do, and it's they have an incredible team of editors, and so it's been a really good opportunity. And I know that there are a lot of other really amazing debuts that have come out, and there's just a lot of really good team that's working with people. So that's been a good experience.
So, what were your expectations for this process you're entering the publishing world, and what's been a good surprise and what's been more challenging?
I didn't have any expectations. I thought I would probably just get a lot of rejection letters, which I did. But
win-win.
The fact that anything materialized was a huge surprise. Seeing how supportive the writing community has been. Cool. I mean, even just like I've only had to block 2 weirdos on Twitter. That was
That's not bad.
More than I'd like, but fewer than I expected. But people are really supportive. They love to see when other people are doing well and having successes. And there's really I really haven't seen a lot of negativity. So that was kind of a surprise. But yeah, it's been an interesting process, and I think just learning to talk about yourself, I think also is kind of a new skill. And I think most of us writers tend to be introverts.
Oh yeah.
It's like somebody told me like that they're never the most awkward or the worst dressed person at writers' conventions. Very encouraging, because that would probably be me. But I think just kind of putting yourself out there, and even just like texting people, because you have to hustle a lot, and that's not my natural personality. But like sending people Facebook messages who you haven't talked to since middle school and be like, hello, I know you liked me very much 20 years ago, but please buy my book.
I have a book.
Did you know?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, the specifics, we don't always hear that from the authors, so you're like trying to just reach out to anybody you can as far as promotional purposes.
Oh, shameless.
Yeah.
I heard that your great aunt Martha has a book club. It's
and we're bad at that. Kathy and I are bad at that. We've had to learn a lot with Game of Books. As far as trying to promote and.
We came together as writers, as we met at a writers' conference. Like you say, the introverts, right? And so we just kind of glommed onto each other and stuck after 6 years. And it is hard because the thing that makes you want to be a natural writer will allow you to work at home for long periods of time alone with just a screen in front of you. And so then the promotion is just a whole separate side. And it's very interesting, that's for sure.
I mean, and some people are just good at both. I mean, they're just
they are.
But I mean, I think probably most of us, like if you said nobody's going to talk to me for 72 hours, like even your coma question, like a small part of me was like, a coma?
Yeah. See, I was like, can I have a private cell in jail and I could just stay away from everyone? Although I know that's not true, but so what piece of advice would you give to yourself? Even just a few years ago now, knowing what you've learned?
I think be really strategic. Seek out as much criticism as you can, and train yourself to welcome it. I think don't give up. I guess just don't give up after one rejection. But yeah, I think one thing I tried to do is like to try and find as many people as I could who I felt like could give me an honest opinion. And you have to kind of train yourself, obviously part of you when you're showing your work to somebody, you want them to be like, oh my God, it's brilliant. Yours is amazing. But to get better, you have to find people who are going to tell you like, oh no, these are all the things that need to change, or like,
and people that you trust their judgment and stuff too.
Yeah,
that's hard. Yeah.
So did you use like beta readers, or did you hire an editor, like an independent editor, or how did you critique your own work?
My mom's an advertising writer, so I gave it to her to read. And she's an advertising writer who really
will she take ours too? Can we say that?
Don't tell anyone.
It might be brutal, but she doesn't really like mysteries, and she's not a huge fiction reader. So like she's been really supportive, but she's also like, well, I haven't really read a mystery since I was like 17. I'm like, okay, Mom, just did you like it? Yeah, but yeah, she was helpful, and like my husband he's very honest with me. Like sometimes like I'll like yell at him back. I'll be like, what do you mean unlikable? But he's like, and
does he read in the genre that you write in?
He reads everything. It's if it's got words that are printed on paper, like and it crosses his path, he will read it. I mean, we have like an encyclopedia of art that he bought from a library in high school. Wow. I mean, somehow it's still in my house somewhere. I don't even know where. It's bad.
You moved with an encyclopedia set?
He moved it from California to Philadelphia, back to California for like this like encyclopedia set of like art terms from like the 90s. Somehow it's in a box somewhere in my house. But yeah, he's really helpful. And I have another friend who's a screenwriter, and
that's good.
And she's totally brilliant, but she writes for TV. So like a lot of her comments were like, what if your character had sex in this scene?
You're like, oh, no,
I can't just have her go from scene to scene having sex with everyone. Like,
I mean,
but you can write the screenplay and add that in if you want, and we'll sell it.
Yeah, like write the screenplay. She can have whatever you want.
That's great.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So before we go, we do have one final question that we like to ask all our authors. Which of your characters would you like to share a meal with, and what would it be?
What would it be?
Yeah.
Probably Margot, and I would say expensive wine and fancy cheese.
Oh,
that's great.
Okay, so Alex, when our listeners want to learn more about you and your book and where to find you on socials, where should they go?
Well, I have a terrible website that I made myself, which is alexkenna.com. And so I'm on Twitter, which is akenna9. I'm also on Facebook, but Twitter is probably where I'm the most active.
All right.
Fantastic. We will include that in our show notes, and Christie does all of that so wonderfully.
Sort of. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun, and we're so glad that you could fit us in your very, very, very busy schedule. And we're sorry that you weren't able to join us for wine, but we could say cheers anyway to much success.
Cheers to your debut and your success.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode.
Subscribe to our podcast on our website, gameofbookspodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you liked what you heard, you can give us a 5-star rating or review.
You can also subscribe on YouTube, where you can watch and listen.
On gameofbookspodcast.com, you can find all the information about what we talked about on this episode. And you can sign up for our newsletter and enter our fun contests and giveaways.
We also post our stories and links on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Hope to see you there.
I can guarantee you that we had fun today.
And we hope you did too.
Cheers.